when you think about this issue, there is no doubt that there's plenty of ink and energy being spilled on this one in the world. And I'm as I often say to people, I have now become not the junior faculty, but the senior. Some of my first students are in their mid-50s now with children in college and maybe graduating from college. And the amount of change that has taken place in the world since when I started teaching in 1982 to now, even in the Church of the Nazarene, I admit to you, I'm somewhat surprised. Now, 2/3 of our student body doesn't come from the Church of the Nazarene, but oftentimes those are the most conservative people, as opposed to the Nazarenes. Mm-hmm. Lots of Nazarene, lots of people. I have a convene once a month what I call the President's Advisory Councils. 11, 12 people that I pick on the faculty and staff who I consider those to be the influencers on campus beyond the SLT, the senior leadership team. And we were talking, for the SLT, I had said that we need to look at both strategic issues that confront us and operational issues that confront us. The operational issues are, and the way I describe a strategic issue would be something that is something we don't have any responsibility for creating, but that we must deal with because it affects us. And operational, the same thing. These are issues that sometimes we created and we must deal with. They're simple, that's more management type things, I guess. But the number one thing on the list of strategic issues is the LGBTQ community. And anybody who's been around a Nazarene college for any time knows that there are always going to be people who would call themselves homosexual and would seek ways to behave that way on the campus, in the dorms, and that kind of thing. And we don't even know all of that when we know what to deal with it. But the issue of homosexuality, and that's not even the biggest. That's where I say, if you're going to talk about sexuality, let's talk about something that is that difficult. Not even talk about transgender and the directive from the federal government that hasn't reached our shores yet, but might, saying that a person should be able to use the bathroom of whatever sex they feel that day they identify with. So my daughter is assistant director back in Advising Kenyon College. So what that means in practical terms is some days I wake up and I feel like a woman, and even though I'm not constructed as a woman, I'm going to use that restroom and I'm going to dress that way. And I will be referred to by her, by faculty, or I can lodge a complaint against that faculty with the administration. Now, that's not an issue we have to deal with at this point. But the very fact that we have turned sexuality into a battleground is a surprise to us, because that's the way it was from the very beginning. Here's what Paul says: shun fornication. Every sin that a person commits is outside the body, but the fornicator sins against the body itself. Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, which you have from God, and that you are not your own? That's 1 Corinthians 6, 18 to 19. We've all read that. We all have a sense of what he's talking about here. And this is, when Paul addresses this in the church at Corinth, in the 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, you would recognize it's the poster child for about every dysfunction a church can have. I used to, as I've thought about the church at Corinth over the years, it's a group of upwardly mobile people who are so self-centered that they can't be the church. And so when Paul admonishes and says, don't you know that you're the temple of the Holy Spirit? What he's actually saying in the plural form is that you together are the temple of the Holy Spirit. And when you join your body with that of a prostitute, you're joining the body of Christ to the prostitute. Now we've individualized that and missed the power of what Paul is saying there. But the fact is, this whole tradition, this whole sexual revolution. I wrote a book years ago called Untaming the Sexual Revolution. And as I've read it over the years, I probably have a lot more sophisticated way of looking at it than I did then. But my premise there was the sexual revolution arose out of the civil rights movement and the women's movement and the student movement. It was just one more dimension of that. But what happened in the sexual revolution is that we had the technology to not pay the price of pregnancy for sexual misconduct. And therefore, it got to the point where it says, it'll be okay, because you could just, as a theologian said one time in the Christian Century magazine, single people need to have sexual relationships. And so we should think that's okay, because they need that intimacy. And what that violates is a theological anthropology that says something very different about us. And I think the biggest difference is that human beings are not just material subjects. And a sexual expression is not just a physical act of gratification. We're also spiritual beings, living in a relationship with God, called to reflect, as we embody that gospel, a sexual ethic that is respective of our faith itself. And as we have probably come to understand, is that the Christian ethic, if the Christian ethic is clear about anything, from Genesis, well, really from Matthew to Revelation, but even in the Bible, there's never any hint in the Bible of any acceptance of same-sex sexual activity. The Holiness Church knew that from the beginning. Now, admittedly, the Holiness Church, in its earliest days, in fact, even my days at Trevecca, they would have a person measuring hymn lines in the dining hall line. And while many people applied for that place, certain people got it. I had a girlfriend, so I didn't apply for it. But and my sister came to Trevecca. I don't think she ever was going to come to Trevecca, but the Dean of Women saw her in a pantsuit, came down out of the office and came and told her to go back and change into a dress because that was more Christian, more modest. And my sister, that was never coming in for sure, because that confirmed everything my mother had experienced there, where women had to wear, if they wore dresses, they also had to wear stockings. And they had to wear the kind of stockings with the black lines in the back. So my mother drew a black line down both of her legs. I think it might have just been easy to wear stockings, but she did that, but still got caught. So from that point of view, we all know that in the early days of the Holiness movement, we put a lot of pressure on women especially. Now men, we only had one rule that I know of, and that was that your hair could not be more than 1 inch below your collar. And you had to have a collar, because a lot of guys just wore the t-shirt. That didn't count. So if you had it a certain length, you had to get a haircut or you were kicked out of school. Once again, that was never a problem of mine because my hair has been so wavy over the years. I tried to grow long hair. It grew out. And truthfully, they had no rule against that. So with all laws, I found a loophole. But ultimately, I quit feeling like, I stopped feeling like bozo with my hair out like this. And so I cut it. Now I got it cut yesterday, so I'd look a little better for you today because my hair is still wavy. I'm glad to have something to be wavy, so I'm not complaining. But the hair doctor said, or the hair cutter said, all I did was cut those waves out. And I said, good, I'm just glad that there's waves to cut out. But I come from a family of full-headed people, so full-haired people, like full-headed. So when I think about holiness, remember what I said about holiness, and that is it's about embodiment. And in the upcoming General Assembly, they're going to amend some of the language in the Code of Christian Character, Covenant of Christian Character, and the Covenant of Christian Conduct to emphasize the fact that we must take full notice of a theology of the body. And for too long, holiness theology, for some of the reasons that I outlined in the first session, has had a little trouble with that, because the body is very difficult to make behave. You see? And that's where it becomes evident to us that we've got work to do. But there are people in the Church of Nazarene that are trying to make that point very clearly. And those people are the people that work in Nazarene schools, and also I'm sure you get it as well. James Gustafson is was during my years and still has a significant body of literature. He taught at the University of Chicago, then he went down to the Candler School at Emory University. I think he retired there, but was at one point at Yale. So he's kind of on the A team of ethicists, and he says that there are three fundamental bases for a Christian sexual ethic. The first one is human nature is both biological and personal, or physical and spiritual. The second one is the acknowledgement of the reality of sin in the form of selfishness. I had two daughters that went to Trebek and graduated from Trebek. The oldest daughter, she's a social worker with a VA in Clarksville, Tennessee now. Three children, and one husband. And she told me one time, she had a very frustrating time there because she's attractive but also intelligent. And a lot of men can take attractive women, but if they're intelligent too, gotta get away from that. Because it might embarrass me in public by knowing something I don't know. And she wasn't exactly easy on people either. She was tough. And she told me one time, you can't date a guy at Trebek more than 2 times without the expectation of sexual activity. Now, I refuse to believe that's true of everybody. I just do. But I believe that it's true a lot of times. And I used to say when I had a chance to talk to the men that was there, shame on you that you. Because that means you turn your sexuality into selfishness. It's about what I want now and not about you at all. I never had anybody come to the altar on that one, but it does seem to me that you got to know what it is. And Gustafson does. And the third one is covenant as a reflection of human sociality and a framework for mutuality and accountability. Now, I say that's Gustafson, he's quoting Farley at that point. A covenant of reflection on human sociality and a framework for mutuality and accountability. I mean, those are the parameters. First of all, we all know. Well, I'll say what it is. I'll say it in English, which that was English, but this is another English. We are made for relationship. What's that?
Can you put your mic closer or something? We're not hearing you as well as the first session.
We'll see if it's red now.
I like your hair. There you go.
Hello? Out there? Okay, the simple English statement is, we are made for relationship. God makes us for relationship. And then the second part of that is, therefore, that relationship is something we need to be held accountable for. Very straightforward statement. We are relational beings. We are accountable for the way we behave. And there are many ways. Sexuality is one of those ways. Now, I have watched that behavior change over the years. But I've just got, this is a very straight, simple, well, seems simple to me. I want to make a few simple statements, I think, about sexuality and how holiness connects with it. The first one is, I think we all need to understand that sexuality is a gift. It's not a problem to be addressed. It's not an issue to be determined. It is a gift. I believe God creates us male, and He creates us female. And I've been around long enough to know that the way we behave sometimes, there's a continuum. They're the all-American guys that love football and hunting and skinning squirrels and frying them up and that kind of stuff. I mean, but there are also guys that like poetry. That doesn't mean that they're gay. They're still male. And there are women that maybe like to hunt and do those things too. So we don't want to make the kind of gender identity purely a matter of, well, males do these kind of things and women do these kind of things. I've always struggled myself with, I've always been a big guy. Bigger sometimes and smaller sometimes, but I said, when I was a teenager, I played football, and the only thing I ever did was any note in football. I knocked out the quarterback, knocked him cold as he could be, in a practice. Now, you don't do that in practice. You say that for the other quarterback. But they said tackle, and I tackled him, and he was really tackled there for a while as he lay on the floor. But I was always more at home in the library and those kinds of things, and trying to write a word or two. And my mother used to wonder, what is going on here? You're supposed to be out there chopping wood and killing things that are not human. And so on and so forth. So, when we say that it's a gift, oftentimes we treat that gift as a problem instead of as a gift. The one way that the covenant between a man and a woman is sealed and expressed is through sexuality. Now, I'll stop there and say that everything we do in some sense is a sexual act because you do it as male or female. But sex cannot be equated with sexual intimacy, because when we do that, we cheapen it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so we have those kinds of relationships. Now, I admit to you that, I don't have a lot of female colleagues and friends. Of course, there aren't a lot of them anyway, but I don't have a lot of them that, I'll go eat lunch with them, just the two of us, and I'll take lunch. And it's not that it's a problem, it's just that it might be perceived incorrectly. And I've had to explain to people here, I'm not afraid of women. In fact, I enjoy, like Wesley did, think women are perceptive, as at least some, and those kinds of things. But you have to respect those parameters. But when you talk about sexual intimacy, it seems to me the Bible is crystal clear on this. If you're going to have sexual expression, it's going to be sexual intimacy is going to be between one man and one woman for life. And anything else is problematic. Christians are to understand that in marriage, human sexuality can and ought to be sanctified by God. Because it doesn't matter. See, many people thought and have said to me, once I got married, then anything I want to do, I can do, and she or he's got to do it. I've had many a conversation with people as a pastor about that. Not so much as a professor, and absolutely not as president. But the truth is, that's not true. Holiness suggests that even in the area of sexual intimacy, we are called to reflect Christ. And that means that that person is a child of God, created in the image of God, to worship God, and not to be the vehicle by which I can satisfy myself intimately. And that's a hard gospel to hear. but it is the best way to live. Human sexuality achieves fulfillment only as a sign of a comprehensive love and loyalty. Oftentimes I get in conversation with people about this, and they talk about, our culture makes it seem like if you're going to buy a car, if you're going to eat a hamburger, if you're going to go out, it's all about your sex appeal. Now, in my life, I've never had that, so it's never been a problem for me. Some people do have that problem. They're good to look at. They're easy on the eyes, so to speak. None of that's ever been true of me. I'm the guy that walks back by you and you don't know. Let's just say, how could that much be in one place? Maybe that. But the fact is that if we're going to talk about human sexuality, we have to do it within the context of loyalty and the broader Christian ethic. Husbands and wives should see sexuality as a part of a larger commitment to Christ. In other words, when we think about our sexual expression in the context of marriage or outside the context of marriage, it must be defined by discipleship. It's not a different logic. Our holiness theology, our attempt to define morality, includes our sexuality. While we may talk about sexual ethics, what we're really talking about are the special issues that come up there. We're not saying it operates on a different premise. So think about this as discipleship. The Christian home is the place where you raise children. And there's no better place to raise children. I've been, as I've said, involved in Nazarene higher education and young people for many a year. And I'll tell you that even in college, students still bear the scars of a traumatic home and even divorce. And sometimes divorce is unavoidable, and I admit that. But it always affects the children negatively. Mm-hmm. We have people that come to Mount Vernon, and they don't want to go home because their home is such an area of conflict and dehumanization. They just want to stay on campus. So Mount Vernon becomes their home. One time I was walking from chapel, not at Mount Vernon, but at Rebecca, with a student who was in one of my basic general education classes. And my younger daughter saw me, and she's very expressive. She'd make anybody think that you're the king of the world when she's around her. And she said, Daddy, came over and hugged me. How are you doing? I said, I'm doing pretty good. How about you? And then she was off, and the girl with me that was walking with me stopped and says, I wish one day, my whole life, I could feel that way about my father. And I said, I wish you could too. So when God brings a man and a woman together and children come, it's the best place to raise children. And much of what we see in our society is evidence of the disintegration of the family home. And, I won't spend a lot of time. I feel like my wife has done most of this. She's certainly been a great mother. I said, you're a great wife. And I say often to her, but you're even a better mother. She doesn't like that, so since she's not here, I'll say that. But yeah. She's both. And our children are better for it. But I'll tell you this, we all know, don't we, that no matter who you are, one person finds it very difficult to raise a child. Because you got to have both the father and the mother. And there are times when I'm the one, and there are times when she's the one. Nazarene pastors, ministers are called to advocate, according to the manual, for a Christian understanding of sexuality. To understand that it is never an end in itself. It's nearly impossible to convince an 18 to 22-year-old that the point of a sexual relationship is not exhausted by sexual intimacy. It is certainly, nobody's going to denying that's important and that is a great experience. But I'll celebrate this March 44 years of marriage with one woman who I met when she was just about to turn 15. Didn't let go, haven't let go since. And I'll tell you, the best part of that relationship has always been, and especially these has been, friendship. A kind of aligning of one life around another. A oneness that only God could create. Now, you can hardly explain that to a 20-year-old. They won't believe you. But you need to plant the seed so when it does emerge, they'll recognize what holiness looks like in the family. All forms of sexual expression must be expressed within the covenant of marriage. I know that's a dark age statement in a lot of places in our world. But as I used to tell my children, because, once they get out, they don't know where they're going. You send to college, you think they are, send it to Mount Vernon. They have to go a lot longer to find trouble. But if you're in Austin or Nashville or Kansas City, you're within a mile or two of trouble any given day. Mm-hmm. Us, it's skunks and squirrels and possums in the road, raccoons, and other stuff too. We're not, it's not like we're all Amish there, but homosexuality is clearly, homosexual behavior is inappropriate. Part of what this suggests, as I've already said, is the importance of the body. The most important gifts we have is the body. I kind of have grown used to mine. When I look in the mirror, I think, yeah, I recognize you. You don't look like you used to, but I think I can see the resemblance between you and who you were a few years ago. Farley says, the fact that humans are embodied spirits inspired in spirited bodies is the glory of our species and the basis of its vulnerability. We live incarnated in a world that is revelatory of the sacred. Plain English, God gives us the body so that we might show to the world what holiness looks like. And that is certainly sexuality. And one of the ways that we express our sexuality is our gender. The scripture suggests that we do not choose our gender. Now, this is going to put MVNU on a collision course with American society at this point, and I know that. Mm-hmm. But that's a fight worth having. And it's an issue worth not surrendering. Because, as I heard somebody in an interview say, I'm not transgender, I'm gender fluid. I wake up each day that whatever sex I want to be, or gender I want to be, I'll be. And there are issues wherever you are at that point. I mean, I don't, and it's not easy to say. And in our world, Title IX, that great legal document that was originally, I went to a half-day meeting this week with people at state legislature in Ohio, and a high-powered religious liberty attorney who was working with the state of Ohio and some others, and she said that in that context that Title IX began as a mandate that if you're going to have a men's team, you have a women's team. So you got a men's and women's. You can't just have men's basketball. You got women's. Same thing. We do have women's softball and men's baseball. We don't have but that was what it was about. So the Title IX committee was to guarantee that women had equal access to athletic activity. But under Obama, it has become to be something unto itself. It has the way in which we express to each other with one another. Sexual harassment's been bound up with it. And no doubt that women have been harassed in the workplace and whatever. But it has now become, if a person comes to you at Mount Vernon, if somebody comes to you and says, I know I look like a female, but I really feel like I'm a male, if we don't refer to that person as he we can be taken to court and prosecuted for it. That's where we're on. Title IX was never intended to be that. Now, the Christian faith makes it plain. You are born one or the other. Now, I realize that there are certain times when you're born with sex orders for both, and I don't think we need to discuss every detail of that. But the point is that God created humankind in His image, and His image, God who created them, male and female, He created them. Now, how in the world did that terrain become the center of conflict in our society? I've already said that we've always been harder on women and their dress. I had a student come to my office when I was provost and said somebody in chapel had indicated that it doesn't matter how a woman dresses, that doesn't free me to act in response to that. And I disagree with that. A woman can dress in a way that can be too much of a temptation for me, and then I'm not responsible for acting on it. I said, get out of town. We are called to live respectfully no matter how people dress. We need to help people sometimes understand that, but you have no license based on how you think a female dresses. Get a life. I wasn't a very affirming moment for him, and I wasn't going for that. I've got $2. And I said, you have turned this up on his head and said that a woman gets to tell you whether you can behave as a Christian. Do you really believe that? He says, when you put it that way, that doesn't sound too good. I said, you're right. And that's the way it is. It's important for us to understand that God gave us our gender as a gift to be used to glorify Him, to be central to our expression of ourselves. And our respect for one another is flawed, therefore, for me to think that my gender is my choice. That's a given. My choice is what I do with that gender and what I do with other people. I can't imagine a world where there weren't women. Women are so much fun to talk to as well as men. And whether we want to admit it to or not, every person we meet can bring flavor and dimension to our life. And so we celebrate that diversity. The issue of gender identity is so misaligned these days that it is not possible for us, it seems, to have a discussion in the public square about that. We're left in a defensive position. And we can talk about it until we're blue in the face, but I'll tell you what's happened is this cultural and social tsunami has been approaching for a long time, and it is now upon us. And if we think that one of us can change that and turn the tide around, we probably won't. Our issue is, how can we begin to teach in our churches and in our life in such a way that at the point where we can be the most like God is often the point where we're the most not like God, and that is our sexual behavior. Now, in some ways, the holiness ethic, the holiness practice has been was years ahead of its time on this issue, in saying that the way we dress does represent God in the world. And explaining that to people is very important. But on the flip side of that, as I've already said, how one dresses does not dictate how people are going to talk to you or treat you. And my responsibility as a man, or anybody else's as a woman, is not to say, you tell me how you want me to treat you by the way you dress. Now, there's a lot of truth in that. But that's not the way we determine our behavior. We determine our behavior on what honors God. And if you look at Genesis, it gives us a clear idea. Now, at one level, what sexuality is a drive to one another, toward one another. Now, when you're younger, I've got 4 grandchildren, the oldest of which is 5 years old, and the youngest of which is will turn 3 after Christmas. And when you're born with a certain gender, but that you're not, and you're asexual to the point. You could just as happy hug a male as a female. I mean, we don't think anything of that, and shouldn't. But as we mature, that drive sharpens and is directed toward that. And so sexuality is a sign of how we can joyfully and in a healthy way be an appropriate expression of God in the world. Rowan Williams, who is a massively important theologian in England, wrote an essay called Body's Grace. There's much to talk about this essay and also much to disagree with, but he provides several important insights. The central insight is stated as follows. The life of the Christian community has as its rationale, if not invariably the practical reality, the task of teaching us this. So ordering our relations that human beings may see themselves as desired as the occasion of joy. And the simplest way is that last statement. As Christians, what really drives our sexual expression is the idea that everybody likes to be desired. And it's that linchpin that can destroy a person. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to do to be desired? And apart from the Christian faith, and even people who go to church, you can get off there. In my church in Virginia, I had a family there, 5 children. The oldest was a 15-year-old daughter. Very conservative, very tight. Oppressively tight. Oppressively restrictive. And I could see, even from the pulpit, this was a church of 400, so you didn't get to talk to everybody every Sunday. I could see this little girl just dying inside. And it's one of those times as a pastor, you just don't know how to reach for it. And then one day, her father came to church and said, she's left with a boy, and I don't know where they're going. She needed to be desired so much that she sacrificed everything to do it. I don't blame the father necessarily, but I do know that the importance of being desired is so crucial the devil can use that desire to destroy our life. And don't ever mistake it. I know you don't. The devil is not about empowering, but about destroying.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And one of the chief ways we do that, if we buy the lie that the need to be desired is more important than anything else in our life. So we recognize that reality. The second statement is this: all relationships and all sexual behavior are guided by desire. 5th century theologian Augustine reminds us that ordered love, charity, is driven by God and ultimately redeems our life, and disordered love, lust, ultimately leads our life to gratification. That's not just sexual lust. It's all kinds of things that you have to confront. 1 John reminds us that for all that is in the world, desire of the flesh, desire of the eyes, the pride of riches, comes not from the Father, but from the world. And the world and its desires are passing away, but those who do the will of God live forever. Now, when we think about that, Last night, your grandson who lives in Ohio was at our house for my wife's birthday. All of her birthday is Saturday. But this is the time that my daughter can come over and he's 2 years old. He wants. Doesn't matter what it is, he wants it. He wants it now. He grabs at it as if he can. He wants Mickey. He wants the reindeer that's standing in front of the Christmas tree. And, we're having a Christmas thing over at our house with campus. There's going to be about 200 people in our house. So my wife started last month decorating for Christmas so it'd be ready. So that's why we're not crazy. The Christmas tree, but he loves the Christmas tree. He's going to have a terrible time thinking about how long it is to December 25th. But the fact is, in his life, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's 3 years old. He wants stuff. He wants Mickey. He wants, one of the funniest things happened a few days ago, or a few months, weeks ago. I wasn't there, but my wife was there, my daughter was there. They were in the Disney store. Take a child to the Disney store and you'll see human nature felt on the big screen. And he loved Mickey. He can't go to bed without Mickey. We got several versions of Mickey. Little Mickey, medium Mickey, and then in the store he saw Big Mickey, about this tall. And he says, he dropped his little Mickey and left him in the floor. He says, I want Mickey. Whatever that wasn't him, that was a rat. This is Mickey the Mouse. And he grabbed that thing and said, I want it. She says, no, put it back. You got to take your Mickey. He says, leave Mickey. And he's walking out with Big Mickey. And he got about 10 steps and he looked back and saw his old friend, the little Mickey the rat. And slowly walked back, put it back on the shelf, and took the little Mickey out. I said, that's a great illustration. Now, it turns out he got Big Mickey anyway later on. Because I was up there about a week after that, my wife said, I'm going to Disney, so I said, you are not getting the Big Mickey. I didn't ask you anything. You wait here. Big Mickey. My goodness, we're so ahead of that. He'll be 10 years old before we catch up with his birthdays, catch up with his presents. He's got everything. You got a daughter, and then my wife she'd be right there. Walmart would call her if she didn't shop every day. She likes to order too, and she have people send comments. What's happened? Are you still alive? And most of that kind of stuff. But what I'm saying is, it's okay to want Mickey. It is. But at some point in our life, we have got to get to the point where we control and order those desires. Because everywhere we go, they're calling from us on the corner. It's Facebook. You got to. I've got this. Twitter. And Twitter's a great thing. I used to communicate with students. All the reason I did was communicate with students. And there you can add anything, anytime you want to. And so if they see you, they'll just add you. You got to go back in and unfollow them. And I discovered that the people that are out there wanting to be your friend on Twitter are not there to be your friend.
Amen.
They're there to destroy your life. And so I've learned how to walk. But I'm saying something as kind of neat as Twitter, Facebook becomes a vehicle for the world to reach into your life and say, can I have a piece of you now? And all of you later? So the importance of ordering our desires is significant, especially where it comes to the body. As Barbara Mandrell used to sang back when I was at Trebek as a student, how could it be wrong if it feels so right?
Yes.
That is a blunt affront to the Christian faith. And so desires, as you know, are not easy to rein in. Coakley, a very important British theologian, says, here lies the crucial difference between authentic spirit-endowed union with Christ in each other and the abuse in which sin and blindness pervert the workings of the desire from their Godward direction. We have to conquer those desires. And I'm here to tell you, you do that by reading the scriptures together, by being accountable. I developed a practice a long time ago. Whenever I get anything that's an invitation to me, that comes to me privately, I lay it in front of my wife and say, I want you to see this. And know that it's been dismissed. That comes with Twitter, that comes with Facebook and everything else. Because we live together. I mean, I think Mount Vernon Nazarene University and all of these institutions, churches, we're a community that is there to hold each other accountable. I'm accountable to the Board of Trustees. The faculty and staff and student body ultimately are accountable to me. And we do that together. The worst thing to do is be caught on an island and have to do it all by ourselves, because we can't. The learning the habits and practices of faith that are designed to conform us to the image of God. I mean, how many times a week do you pray the prayer, Lord, help me? Help me be faithful. Help me keep this thing turned up. John Wesley talks about expelling love. What is expelling love? I mean, we don't live our Christian faith backwards. We don't live our faith walking away from sin. We live our faith walking toward God and His love. But when we do that, we're walking away from sin. Holiness is not a subtraction problem. It's a multiplication possibility. And then mutual accountability in the body of Christ. And I hope you have somebody in your life that you can say, if you're heading in the wrong direction, they'd be willing to come talk to you. They would care enough to take the risk of providing witness to you. Article 10 of the Church of Nazarene says this. It talks about the holy obedience of love made perfect, participating in the means of grace, especially fellowship. And there is another page behind that. Disciplines and sacraments, we grow in grace and wholeheartedly love God and neighbor. So we have the society that helps us to understand. We've got another one coming after this needs to be done. Let me just real quickly. I don't know how time goes away. I'm sure it seems longer to you. I'm just up here chirping away about stuff that really means to me. Let me just give you the third one. We need to rethink our sexuality relationships in light of the concept of discipleship, which I've already given a basic indication of. Here's 4 questions I ask people oftentimes when they come to me. As pastor, even I don't really deal with a lot of student behavior issues. A faculty or staff issue would land on my desk, and a lot of times even students, but not as often. But here are 4 questions that I would ask myself and ask them to ask themselves. What will my behavior suggest about God? Because that's what holiness is. What will my behavior suggest about my self-understanding? What does it reveal about me? What will my life be in the presence of others? And then finally, what does it suggest about the future I envision? Those 4 questions in my mind will help us to control these issues that come into our life. And I want you to know that maybe the most significant temptation we can have when it comes to sexuality is pride. And pride's much bigger than just sexuality. And I want you to know that in my mind, I know that mistakes that I have, and mainly those I haven't made, remind me that whatever victories I can testify to, I do so as a testament to a God of grace and a church born out of forgiveness and hospitality and generosity. Because I am not bragging about myself. I don't want to do that. But I do want to be able to say to the people that come to Mount Vernon, look at me. If you live like this, you'll be okay. Not prideful, but to say, in that context, I want you to know what God's grace can do if you'll just keep on the road.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
The victory is never won by being a racehorse. The victory is that stubborn mule who just won't stop putting one foot in front of the other. Anyway, that's a few thoughts on sexuality.